Hello everyone. Let's start with our conference number 15. Ego, personality, and essence. Well, it's necessary to know to make to know what is the difference between the ego, personality, and essence, and this is what the conference will teach us today. Will help us with today. Okay, to know when during our daily life, during our actions, emotions, and thoughts is manifesting our essence, personality, or the ego. All right, to learn how to distinguish them as much as we can from instant to instant. All right. Now there are three different types of actions. Three different types of actions. Number one, the actions of the ego. And when we talk about ego, we are talking about recurrences as well. If we remember conference number 12, we talked a lot about the different recurrences we have from existence to existence due to the existence of our ego in our lives. All right? If we are not in an inner vigil from instant to instant, unfortunately, these different recurrences that are in fact repetitions from existence to existence will be happening all over again without exception. Okay, so that is the first type of act we can find in our daily life. All right, and in fact we are full of ego nowadays, unfortunately. This is the cause, the origin of our inner unpleasant events and circumstances. All right, now second type of act we have accidents. Accidents occur, okay? Accidents exist, accidents happen because we are slept, unfortunately. All right, so these accidents, because there is a law of accidents, a mechanical law, which is one of the 48 laws that control and govern our lives, and one of them is the law of accidents. Unfortunately, accidents will provoke new recurrences, right? But if we are in an inner state of self-observation, is less possible to leave accidents in our life. All right, now the third type of act is called conscious acts. All right, it's necessary to be awakened if we want to live permanently from instant to instant and each time more conscious acts in our life. For this is necessary to be awakened. It's something with urgency. When we talk about conscious acts, are the acts of our inner God, also called inner being and consciousness as well. All right, just because we are not drunk or we are not doing drugs, just due to that we are not conscious people. When we talk about consciousness, we are talking about that divine part in each one of us our inner God, which is totally different to our ego. All right? This is something opposite in association with our own ego. All right? Now, let's start with the explanation of the ego. All right? Well, when we talk about ego, it is also known with other different terms. For example, evils, subjective elements, psychological defects, also ego is called mechanicity, suffering, pleasure, pain, concepts. Right? Ignorance. A person that has studied a lot in different type of universities, getting and achieving PhDs, masters, etc., etc., could be perfectly ignorant. And could be perfectly ignorant for the objective knowledge, which is the one of our inner God. Right? It's also called with the names of desires, mistakes, temptations, instincts, temptations, and so on. All right? So this is the main definition of our ego. Ego exists in our life due to fornication. Okay? We've been very disrespectful with our sexual creative energy. We are fornicators since thousands and even millions of years ago. Due to fornication, we've been creating too much ego. And that's why we have the society we have currently, right? That's why we have the mankind, the one we have currently, due to fornication. And from existence to existence, it's been in reality the creation of different psychological defects. All right? And psychological defects are a reality due to the fact that we don't transform impressions. All right? It's necessary to learn to transform impressions to stop fornication and to stop the creation of more psychological defects in our psyche. All right? Because all these psychological defects govern and control our lives. Not only emotionally, mentally, but also for sure physically. Right? It's necessary to delete the ego. For our own good and even for a common good, it's necessary to eliminate ego, because inside of our ego is trapped our real consciousness, our inner being, our inner God, in form of powers, faculties, virtues, inner forces, etc., etc. During the next conferences, gradually and little by little, grain by grain, we'll be explaining all the existence, all the realities of these powers, faculties, virtues, etc., to really know ourselves and the rest of the universe. At least for now, unfortunately, we can affirm that due to fornication, there is a reality in our lives called ego. And ego produces pleasure, but also pain in our lives. And it's also called with these different terms, okay, or words. So it's necessary, as it's been told, to stop the creation, to stop creating ego, and to stop fornicating. It's necessary to transform impressions. This is something with urgency. And when we want to transfer impressions, the first tool to do it, to transform radically ourselves without justifications, without excuses, it's necessary to start with self-observation. All right? And number two, second crucial point or aspect here is to reflect. Reflection. Analysis about what we detect in our inner world is something with urgency if we honestly want to be something different. If we want to become ourselves in something different and better. All right? So due to lack of self-observation, there is a real manifestation of each one of our psychological defects. Heavier and heavier and heavier from existence to existence. All right? So ego is the cause of our sufferings. Well, so what is the nature of the ego? The nature of the ego is molecular. So, ego belongs to the fifth dimension, also called the astral world. The astral world is part of the fifth dimension. Its nature is molecular. So it's made of molecules. As soon as we fall asleep, we go to that fifth world, but slept. It's necessary to delete the ego, to release the consciousness that will let us be awakened in that fifth dimension. All right? It's necessary to reflect on our behaviors, emotions, thoughts, worries, fears, prides, gluttonies, hates, resentments, laziness, and so on. All right? And these 5 different type of impressions are associated intimately with the different 5 external senses that we have. Sight, the other one related with tactile impressions, that capacity of listening, for example, of touching, all right, with the different 5 senses are intimately associated our different 5 type of impressions. Right? Also, as you're saying, Tyson White, is true. Ego is also called, could be called also as habits. Right? That's correct. It's necessary to delete those mechanic habits those temptations, those desires, those concepts, those subjective elements, those evils, if we honestly want to transform radically ourselves, right? There are some new psychological defects. Let's analyze something else. In the last human existences, we've been creating, unfortunately, new psychological defects related and associated with the technology. Let's talk about new psychological defects. Yes, also lust is a psychological defect. All those different unfortunate sexual desires are necessary to delete, right? To release from our lust the authentic chastity, to learn how to make love properly and seriously. Well, new psychological defects. Or subjective elements. Well, new subjective elements, for example, the psychological defect of the cell phone, the psychological defect, for example, of pornography. We are slaves nowadays of our cell phones, of our mobiles. We are slaves. Many times, not always, obviously, I can't generalize about our behaviors related with technology. But unfortunately, we are slaves of our mobiles, right? Unfortunately, due to the reality of the existence of our psychological defect of the cell phone, it wastes our emotional energy. Pornography is a reality as well in our existences. The psychological defect of the computer. The psychological defect, for example, of our favorite video game. These psychological defects waste our emotional, mental, and even physical energy. All right? Because we don't know to manage them properly, consciously. A mobile is not good or bad. It depends on the way we use it. All right? It is exactly the same with the usage of computers. Computers are not good or bad. It depends on the way we use it. Okay? Because through the correct usage of computers and high tech, it's possible to work. All right? And work is something, a job is necessarily something urgent. It's important, it's crucial in our lives. But the bad thing is, for example, when we use computers to watch pornography, all right? Or to only waste our emotional and even mental energy playing video games without limits. All right? And all of us, without exception, have created all these different type of new psychological defects that make stronger and even more stronger our entire and whole ego. All right? Obviously, we have the right, Tyson. You are asking something, apparently. If we have the right of watching television, yes, for sure. In fact, it's necessary many times during the day to see news, for example, to know what is happening all around the world, and not only in our country, not only in our region or in the zone we live. But the thing is when, for example, We establish in our lives negative schedules of watching TV without limits. All right? So all of us without exception have created the psychological defect of the TV. All right? And this is a reality. Unfortunately, not always, but many times during our present human existence, we saw or we've been watching TV until, for example, midnight or even 1, 2 a.m. without objective argument. Without objective argument, we've been wasting our mental and emotional energy just watching TV because, for example, we like to watch a specific series. All right? Or, for example, a football game until 1 or 2 a.m. That is not right. All right? But obviously, the usage of TV in a correct way is possible. When, for example, we want to be informed about what's happening in our nation, in our country, watching news. All right? That's why it's very important here to reflect on our different and common social behaviors. All right? Unfortunately, our teenagers are in a very strange and delicate situation. Many of them are slaves of pornography, video games, mobiles, etc., etc. Pornography, that's a reality in our teenagers, and for sure in a high percentage of adults. All right, so these are new subjective elements we've created due to lack of consciousness. Due to lack of consciousness. All right? So we are not balanced people. We are not conscious people that know when is correct to turn on our TV, when is correct to turn off or turn on our computer, and when is only correct and conscious to use our mobiles. We use them, but many times go into the extremes. It's due to the reality of the existence of these new subjective elements. Right? All of us, without exception, have created the psychological defect of video games. We feel pleasure and even pain when, for example, we are experiencing any type of video game in 3rd D or in 4th D. It does not matter. We feel pleasure, for example, when we are watching or seeing pornography in a magazine, by computer, by TV, etc., etc. All right? So unfortunately, it's necessary to reflect on our current behaviors, to recognize, to accept that all of them, without exception, should be deleted, should be eliminated. All right? To use them properly, to use them with consciousness. Right? These are the new subjective elements. They are the oldest, for example, the oldest psychological defects that our current mankind has created. The oldest psychological defects. Psychological defects. All right? Now, let's start with laziness. Laziness is a reality all around the world. This is as old as life in the planet. All right? And this is a causal defect. This is the causal defect that currently has gotten our current mankind. Now, the father of all psychological defects, pride. Due to the existence of pride in our psyches, in our minds, we broke relationships. We were fired of our jobs. Right? We had, and we have in fact nowadays, negative interactions with our neighbors, for example, due to pride. The father of all psychological defects. And this is the one that has gotten the most our current mankind. All right? The origin of ego, for example, probably this is the most terrible psychological defect. Lust. Lust produced our entire ego. The bad usage of our sexual creative energy produced the whole ego and all its subdivisions, all its roots. Right? These are the oldest ones. All of them, without exception, have processes of evolution and processes of involution. Right? It's very important to reflect on our psychological defects, specifically these causal defects. But also, it's possible to release the best part, the best of pride, which is humbleness. Inside of each psychological defect of pride, when we are arrogant, when we are pride in the interaction with others, if we ask to our Divine Mother to delete our pride, that part of God inside of each one of us that has the mission, the power of eliminating each one of our psychological defects, we'll feel how we are less pride and more humble. All right? If we honestly and seriously want to learn how to make love properly and consciously, it's necessary to eliminate lust in all its subdivisions: masturbation, homosexualism, lesbianism, oral sex, anal sex, threesomes, orgies, morbosities, etc., etc., to release the virtue which is trapped inside of our defect of lust. In this case, chastity. Chastity is absolutely opposite and different of celibate. Celibate is not chastity, it's absolutely the opposite. All right? Celibate is, for example, an involution process of lust. When you've proved entirely everything about lust, threesomes, orgies, oral and anal sex, homosexualism, lesbianism, etc., etc., the last level of degeneration in a person is celibate. And all it starts, if we want to continue talking about lust, with pleasure. This is one of the first stages of the evolution process of this psychological defect. And part of the evolutional process of lust is, for example, homosexualism, lesbianism, threesomes, orgies, change of gender, change of sex. All those rejectable behaviors are the involution part of lust. And the worst level of lust is celibate. If we want to achieve chastity, it's necessary to delete, to eliminate our lust. All right? We are the only mankind in all our solar system that accepts homosexuality, lesbianism, oral sex, anal sex of all planets of our solar system. The rest of mankind's, of humanities of our solar system, they don't accept all these incredible behaviors that we have as accepted. For us, it's absolutely normal. Homosexuality, threesomes, change of sex, lesbianism, masturbation, pornography, etc., etc. We've accepted that type of behaviors. But people of Jupiter, people of Venus, people of Mars, the people of Ganymedes, one of the moons of Jupiter, they don't accept these behaviors that for us, the ones related and associated with lust, are absolutely typical and accepted. All those mankinds only accept transmutation of sexual energies. They do know how to make love. They only accept sex between a man and a woman, and that's all they accept. And their societies, their humanities, their cities, physically, only talking about physically, their cities are paradises, are real paradises. Okay? So yes, we are the worst of our entire solar galaxy and even of our entire galaxy. We are not as good as we think we are. We are the worst mankind of all mankinds in our solar system. All right? So it's necessary to analyze our current sexual behaviors to establish which is the evolution, and the evolution processes of each one of our psychological defects. All right? Now, remember something, it's necessary to delete our psychological defects. First of all, that is possible through the practice of self-observation. With the practice of self-observation, and then the inner petition mentally, from the bottom of our hearts to our Divine Mother, we may feel the change immediately as soon as we make the inner petition to our inner Mother to delete each one of our psychological defects. Not only the ones associated with lust, but also the ones related with pride, laziness, technology, gluttony, envy, hates, those lower emotions, those negative thoughts, all those fears that all of us have inside, to release the consciousness which is trapped inside of each one of those psychological defects. Inside of each one of our psychological defects, there is trapped the virtue, the essence, which is part of our own inner being. All right? Remember, each one of our psychological defects origins, causes our recurrences from existence to existence. But if we delete, if we eliminate our psychological defects, we'll see how we do change our own destiny. We are only making repetitions and incessant repetitions of the same comedies, tragedies, and events that we've been facing during our last existences. If we honestly want to purify ourselves, to reach, to achieve our own self-realization, which is to know ourselves, it's necessary, firstly and mainly, to learn to delete our ego without mercy, without justifications. Haven't we seen how our society is currently? Haven't we detected how degenerate we are? Haven't we seen what type of monsters, what type of negative beings are controlling our lives in our societies, our nations, our continents, our entire world, our mankind? Do we really believe that we are doing a great job in our society? Do we really believe that all of us without exception, or in general, we are in an evolution process? Our degeneration is something never seen before. Remember something, and it's only possible through reflection and analysis and our own feedback. We are the worst mankind that have existed in our Earth planet. Due to ego. Due to the existence of ego in our psyches. If we can delete only one of our psychological defects, we have the great possibility of deleting the whole ego. Alright? Let's analyze something different, please. This is a matter of analysis and reflection. Let's analyze something different, please. It's been told that inside of our ego is trapped the 97% of our consciousness. And nowadays, we only have the 3% of our consciousness released. But it is only possible this consciousness, this divine spark, if we awake this 3% of consciousness. How to do it? How we can do it? Through self-observation. As soon as we start with this process, self-observation, which is to observe our inner reactions. Yes, our emotions, thoughts, worries, fears, resentments, hates, prides, envy, laziness, etc., etc. Immediately we wake these 3% of consciousness. All right? The first thing to establish an authentic process of daily regeneration in our lives starts with self-observation. This is the sixth sense of our current mankind. The other five senses, the ones we know that are associated with the external perceptions of life, all right, work for the interaction that is necessary to have in our lives physically, all right? But there is a sixth sense that helps us, as we can't imagine, to establish correct interactions with ourselves. With the self-observation, we detect each one of our psychological defects. To know ourselves is something basic and crucial to finally achieve and deserve our own self-realization. All right? But all starts with the self-observation of each one of our psychological defects from instant to instant, or as much as we can during our life. All right? Also, part of this 3% of consciousness that we awake if we are in an inner state of self-observation is our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother is the female part of God inside of each one of us. When we detect that, for example, we are feeling envy due to anything, no matter what, due to anything, we mentally ask to our Divine Mother to delete that envy or that fear, that rancor, that hate, that laziness. Whatever we are feeling, that worry, whatever we are thinking, is necessary to ask to our Divine Mother, which is the female part of God inside of each one of us, to delete it in order to release the trapped consciousness, the authentic consciousness which is inside of each one of our psychological defects, in order to feel the change. All right? Now, mentally, from the bottom of our hearts, sincerely, we ask our Divine Mother something like this. If we are feeling any type of fear or any type of pride, right? Any detail associated with lust, there comes the inner petition to our Divine Mother, mentally focused in our hearts. And immediately we'll feel, do not believe me please, just prove it, do not believe me, how the capacity of reaction of the fear decreases if we are feeling fear at any moment, or if at the very moment we are feeling pride due to anything, we ask to our Divine Mother to delete that type of pride. Exactly the same with lust, disobedience, any type of morbosity, that impulse of watching pornography, laziness, etc., etc., and we'll release immediately. We'll feel the change because we release the virtue which is trapped inside of the defect of fear. In this case, it's braveness. The opposite to fear is braveness, right? The opposite to pride is humbleness. The opposite of lust is chastity, etc., etc., etc. Inside of our ego, in each one of our psychological defects, is trapped the virtue. All right? what type of partner, what type of spouse, what type of person you want to have by your side. A person full of fears, a person full of pride, a person full of lust, or a brave person, a humble person, a person that respects sex in the way it has to be. All right? And yes, Tyson White, Divine Mother is exactly the same, our own Holy Spirit. And you know what? When we talk about the Holy Spirit, which at the same time is our own Divine Mother, we are talking about our sexual creative energy. Our semen, literally, our seed, our sexual energy is our own Holy Spirit, our own Divine Mother. These three are exactly the same. Believe it or not, when we talk about our Divine Mother, our Holy Spirit, we are talking about our semen, our seed. So inside of each one of us, without exception, we do carry the Holy Spirit. That's why we say here that it's necessary to finally comprehend as soon as possible that our sexual creative energy is sacred, because we are talking at the same time about the Holy Spirit. All right? Please. It's necessary to always reflect on all this information and to practice this called psychological death. Self-observation and the inner petition to our Divine Mother will not only release us the virtues which are trapped inside of each one of our psychological defects, but at the same time, a deeper capacity of reflection, a deeper ability of analysis of each one of us. And it is only for practitioners. This is not a theory. This is a reality only. This is a fact only for practitioners. Remember, self-observation. Start observing yourself, your inner reactions from instant to instant in your lives. When somebody is aggressive with you, when somebody is trying to make you smile, when somebody is nice with you, when somebody is physically violent with you, etc., etc., etc. In the interaction with the rest of our family, neighbors, society, we know ourselves, and we may detect those curious, interesting, and incredible psychological defects that we've been creating from thousands of years ago. They're in all those human physical bodies, in all those human existences. All right? Now, what happens literally when we delete all those psychological defects little by little? Let's see. At the same time, we are not only releasing the virtue that is trapped inside of the corresponding psychological defect. Okay? So let's see, I really want to do something here. Let's think about our psychological defects as persons, individual persons, all right? Let's see, let's analyze, let's reflect on the possibility that this is the defect of, for example, envy. These are human creations. These are realities inside of each one of us, psychological effects that govern and control our lives. When we are feeling any type of envy due to anything, and we detect that inner state of envy, remember the inner petition to your Divine Mother. My Divine Mother, please delete me this envy. Immediately what you release will be as follows. Virtue. The virtue which is trapped inside of the defect of envy. In this case, instead of suffering due to the reality that, for example, your neighbor has bought an amazing car or an amazing house, you feel happy and you help him to achieve and to get more physical and emotional and spiritual things in his life. All right? Instead of suffering due to the fact that others can make something incredible and better with their lives, instead of suffering for that, you work for them in order to help them to achieve better and better things in their lives. All right? That is the opposite virtue to envy. It is philanthropy. Philanthropy. All right? But also at the same time, believe it or not, we are releasing minimum, tiny percentages of powers. Very tiny percentages of faculties. Tiny percentages of concentration. You're releasing light. When we talk about light, we are talking about wisdom. Esoterically, symbolically, when we talk about light, is the same as wisdom. At the same time, we are releasing love or fire. And when we talk about fire, yes, exactly, we do release love. And how necessary is love currently in our society? How urgent, how essential is necessary wisdom? Wise people in our societies. All right? Also, at the same time, we're releasing will. All right? Inner strength. All right? You're being more vital for your external things and for your spiritual and esoteric work. You feel more vital, for example. All right? So for sure, it requires discipline, perseverance, practice to feel, to see the change, and to live. All these matters. That's why we can affirm always here that this is only for practitioners. Only practitioners will experience or are going to experience all these things. We are not interested in followers, in believers, but only in practitioners, because only practice makes perfect. All right? And with this process of the psychological death, gradually